and small movies and small productions are getting smaller, and that's basically, it's like it's harder and harder to cross that gap unless you're making Avengers 3, basically, or some sort of, specifically a Marvel property at this point. So
to finally answer the question, which is how do you actually make a business and run a business and feed yourself and put a roof over your head? For us, the answer is a combination of ad revenue, crowdfunding, and the occasional sponsored gig. Basically, our business model is we kind of have seasons of videos. We'll have a couple months where we're not putting videos out, where we are working on that bigger project. We're working on that bigger idea, writing scripts or doing development or delving into a project that's not necessarily going to be seen on YouTube. And then we get back into the YouTube thing, and we put up a video every 2 weeks. We run that for at least 6 months of the year. And that's the consistency that you need to build that audience and build that brand. And you need that audience and you need that brand. You need to have a following so that when you put out those products, people are there to consume it. But we're lucky enough that we have enough of a following and dedicated enough fan base that they support us through crowdfunding. We're running a Patreon campaign, which helps, we have the ad revenue, which kind of accounts for about 15 to 20% of the revenue that we make from video, and then Patreon is the rest of that. So that enables us to do these pieces.
And I work with Niko on the corporate digital channel.
My name is Brandon Lunch. I originally did the Freddie W channel, and then as of about 2 years ago, I'm now doing game development as well as 360 VR content.
Great, and
I just need to go. And that's not this joke. Alright, I'm Joe Pennant, and I have a channel called Mystery Guitar, but it's not important enough.
awesome. So I want to start off by getting a read from you guys here in the audience. How many of you are deeply committed and looking to make practical and visual effects in your own work? That's what I like to see. All right, so we're gonna get really detailed, you guys. We're gonna get really nerdy up here.
Please bear with us. We're gonna have a lot of numbers and stuff to deal with here. So just don't fall asleep.
So let's just start off by if each of you want to describe a little bit about how much effects experience did you have when you first started off making stuff for YouTube?
Well, pre-YouTube, Niko, myself, and actually Brandon, we actually all made videos in high school together. And Niko and myself in particular were really focused on visual effects growing up because basically with $0 in our pocket, we needed to figure out ways to recreate cool action scenes. And whether that was through, visual effects, or through practical effects, red dye and some corn syrup and stuff like that, whatever we can find in the cupboard.
We used to take firecrackers to magazines and put on our shirts. So
but the magazines don't have it. But yeah, so we had, there's a lot of homebrew amateur filmmaking that went into our work for getting into YouTube.
I think the important takeaway from it is we didn't pursue VFX for VFX's sake. Instead, we pursued it because we wanted to really make action movies. And so we were trying to come up with solutions given no budget, nothing. We just had our computers, so how are we going to go about creating the look that we want to achieve? And so it was always going towards an end goal rather than just trying to do effects for effects' sake.
So there was no specific training necessarily. No, go ahead.
It's a running theme now.
Sorry, I'm just gonna go.
No.
Yeah, for me, I've always started to do effects for the effects sake. So I'm just gonna go. I didn't know anything at all. I started shooting on my parents' VHS camera, basically. VHS-C, which was like a little tiny VHS cartridges, which were awesome. And I would digitize those and post them online. I didn't even have a webcam, so I couldn't make effects really because they shot it through 20x240. So what kind of effects can I make with that? And then once I got better and better stuff, I wanted to see what kind of stuff I can do. I had to see what these guys are doing with effects, and I started working with Freddie, and Freddie was working with Brandon at the time. And we were like, let's just do cool stuff, because you guys do way better stuff than we do. So we got started there.
Yeah, my whole life I was since 7 making videos, like probably many of you, and using dirt in the air and doing that as my explosions or figuring out how to use gasoline when my parents weren't looking. But it was really interesting because all the guys in the panel, I started watching Joe first in my dorm room, like from 6 years ago or whatever, and all his compilation and cuts and special effects, and then I saw he worked with Freddie, found Corridor, or these guys, Sam and Niko, and then realized, oh, there's like Action Essentials and all these other things to use, After Effects, which is how I stumbled onto all the effects stuff.
No, so going back to what you guys were saying about effects for effects' sake, does that mean that basically every time you were creating a new effect for the first time, it's basically learning how to use this tool for the first time in a specific way?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, a lot of the effects for effects' sake is, like Sam said, when we got started, we wanted to do gunfights and explosions, and nobody's going to rent out blank fire machine guns to 14-year-old kids. So the next best thing is figure out the computer.
Yeah, even still, like, I watched The Expendables 3, and it wasn't a good movie. It's alright. But basically, even all like the gunfights in that movie, they look great, but they're 100% CG too. It's like, it's weird because even though we started out kind of doing all this stuff in the computer as a way to save money, it's like it's kind of gotten to the level now where it kind of is the way you do it in a weird way. So. Yeah.
But I think what's funny about YouTubers in general, and probably all of us on stage, I don't know about you guys, but I try to look for the practical way of how to do it, and then for the parts where it's like, oh, absolutely no way we can blow up a car, well, we have to get a CG car or whatever. But I think to some degree, even if it's throwing real rocks on the road, you guys do that, I know you do that. I think we always backtrack and start with the foundation of what can be real, and then why do we need to do something that's CG or fake.
Yeah, well, even like an odd extension of that is, between visual effects, we don't necessarily try to do what the actual effect is. We try to mimic what the Hollywood special effect is. So, like, for example, if you're going to do a VFX or a bullet hit, you don't make it look like an actual bullet hit, you make it look like a Hollywood bullet hit.
Sure, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, how important, what is the value of a practical effect versus a digital effect?
If you want people to believe what they're watching, absolutely. If it's crucial for people to believe what's on screen, you do it practically. That's slowly changing, only for like the top 0.01% of films, like all the VFX and the Avengers. It's like it's good enough to make you entertained, but in no way it doesn't try and convince you that it's really happening. It's an illustration. It's supposed to be. It's no more than watching a cartoon. But there are movies like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes where they have the effects so honed in that they are trying to use these visual effects to convince you it's real. And that is like that top tier. And that exists on almost no movies right now. But like Jurassic World is a perfect example. I don't think they're trying to convince you that the dinosaurs are real. They're just trying to show you it's almost like an animated movie at that point. It's not these dinosaurs are real. It's like, look at this action scene. Look at the cool ideas going into the action scene with the dinosaurs. Yeah.
And it's interesting that that's how all effects used to be. When you look at a rear projection and a car scene, and there's a guy doing this with the steering wheel, and like there's, but you're not supposed to believe that that's real, but that's just kind of how people saw movies. It's like, okay, yeah, they can't shoot in a real car, or like doing that for real is extremely difficult. So why not? I'm just going to suspend my disbelief and think that's how it is. That's just how movies are made. I wonder, we look back in those rear projection screens and we're like, how fake is that? The guys just doing this with I think we're going to do the same thing with the Jurassic World and the movies like that, where 10, 15 years from now, who knows, even less, maybe, we're going to look back and say, wow, those were awful things. And yeah, if you look at something like Jurassic Park, which had so many practical dinosaurs, and you look back at it today, 20 years later, and you're like, I'm not bad at math, but it's not even close to yours. And
it's 21. 1994.
Nailed it, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Okay, I thought it was like 2005. Never mind. I'm old. And I think we look back at it and we say, wow, that's incredible. It's because all the 3D animators had something to work with. Had like, okay, this is what a dinosaur should look like, so I'll work from that.
When you guys look back on your earlier work, do you feel like it holds up?
Not really.
It just feels shame.
I delete videos.
Yeah, but I mean also, speaking for everyone here, but I feel like also a lot of the videos we've been making, we're not necessarily trying to convince people that what's happening in these videos is real. You know, it's more for the entertainment factor. You know, we're trying to just communicate the idea of what's happening rather than, you know, prove that this is reality, so to speak. You know, cartoon presents shooting out of people's heads. They're like, gosh knows what CG video game stuff and what's going on. But yeah.
The better answer is
Yeah, thanks.
It's really looking back at videos, being proud of the effort that was put into it, and especially, you know, in all of our cases working with YouTube, we've always set very hard deadlines on ourselves. And Zach especially with mine, you know, very aggressive deadlines for content to get it out. And so you don't have that month or 2 months to sit there and just tweak every little thing. And so it's kind of budgeting, knowing that, hey, I've got 80 hours that I'm going to put into this video to get it out, and being proud of how you kind of allocated that before releasing it and moving on to the next one.
Whereas movies, you know, they can last forever. So it's you know, they have that time, that budget, that's 6 months basically to work on one shot with 200 people. We don't have those kind of budgets. We don't have those kinds of. It's 3 or 4 guys that are all just doing it in a place in Burbank. Yeah. It's really difficult to put that. Yeah. So I feel like I'm not proud of what I've done in the past. That's not what I'm saying. And I think I'm proud of what we've done, and I'm really glad that my stuff looks like crap from way back in the day. Otherwise, I wouldn't have learned anything, you know, or wouldn't have hired better animators. We wouldn't have hired better people to work with. And so I think that it's good that things are getting better and better.
Trying to make sure I'm not cutting anyone off this time. So what is, I mean, looking at what other people are up to, looking at your own work, what is one major mistake that you think gets made all the time in terms of crafting an effect?
The we'll fix it in post mistake. You know, where you're on set and you have 30 minutes to get a shot. It's like, just do it this way, we'll get the lighting later. We don't need the mirror ball, we don't need this, we don't need any of that kind of stuff. The fix it in post will never look good. You know, it will always look like something that was mishmashed together. Whenever you can, like you said, do practical. Whenever you can, really prepare for a shoot. Like you must shoot on a green screen, light it in the correct way. You know, have your background play first, so you're having something to match. If you're just saying, we'll just get this now because this is what it is, you're gonna end up getting machines.
I feel like I've noticed a lot of younger creators, people that are trying to do heavy effects, you know, driven videos, selling themselves short, and I think in a way not believing that their video can be as good as someone who's had a ton more experience, or as good as this Hollywood production, especially in terms of editing and shot framing. There's certain things where it's like, I think the way we always tried to approach it was, we have the same tools. We're using a Handycam, but it has a zoom range. It's the same zoom range of the lenses that they're using in Hollywood. Therefore, there's no reason why I can't frame up the same shot for the dialogue scene as they are. There's certain things that we've done. And so in a way, I see people rushing things too much and almost putting them, you know, stopping before things are done. Where someone will say, hey, check out this effect, and I'll send it to you. And you look at it and you go, well, they did all the hard stuff, but they didn't quite do that last 10% just to send it home. And I think in a way, just because they didn't believe they could get it to be that good.
I think one of the biggest mistakes creators make, and I have made that mistake too, this mistake is creating it based on the effect, whatever the whole concept of the video is based on the effect, whatever the moment is, and not crafting around the story. I remember seeing, I think Brandon, it was you and Freddie, when you went out and like the story, guy goes out and could go through the grocery store, but the effect is he's skydiving down to the ground and goes back home, he lives in the sky, it's genius. But it's based on that story, and that's what made that video so awesome to me. It wasn't just some VFX test of a guy skydiving from a house in the sky. So I think story comes first, and effects complement the story.
Yeah, and kind of on that note too, like certainly one of the big mistakes Niko and myself I feel like have made on a lot of videos is, it's putting the effects before the concept is certainly a really big thing, because you know, you can make an effect, you can spend as long as you want on a certain effect, but the thing is that it's, you know, it can look as good as anything else, but if there's not a good idea driving it, then there's no reason to go to that 100% level either. And especially when making content for YouTube, it's like It's all about finding that short, that little concept that drives a video and drives an idea and concept, and letting the effects help you get there rather than relying on the effects to be the end goal, so to speak.
Yeah. To take that concept even further.
Even further.
Even further.
Whoa.
Careful. Doing actually too much effects to the point where people are going to enjoy your video, and they're going to view it, they're going to share it, and if you're hitting that point, and like it's being successful, and you still have 2 more weeks of effect shots to do, then you have too much effects in your video. You don't just need to like just saturate it with incredibly hard shots. Just do a couple, and you're good.
Or maybe sometimes thinking that you have to do an effect and it's the only way, when really maybe within the story of your short film, that's not the best thing. If you have like a morph transition that you're trying to spend all your time on, then really you can just do a cutaway really fast, and then the very next shot the person's holding something else. Maybe that's the best thing to do, because one, it's going to save you time, it's going to save you, for an audience. Always think about it as an audience. Okay, I'm watching this for the very first time, or like when in After Effects you hit 0. It used to be 0. I don't know what they've done to it now. It's just still 0. It's you hit 0 and you're watching the shot over and over and over and over again, and you see every single tiny little mistake. Sometimes stop, render out your shot, put it within a sequence, watch the whole thing, and then you say, oh, okay, that works within a sequence. Maybe that doesn't look good by itself on a freeze frame, but maybe it works.
So what for you guys is the most essential tool in creating effects?
Camera effects.
Yeah, camera's pretty good.
Camera's important.
Do all you guys still use After Effects?
The rotor brush.
Rotor brush, yes.
Yeah, After
You
Effects.
talk down about rotor brush in the industry. I enjoy it. Yeah, it's like that. It's great. It's the best tool.
I'd say that the most essential tool would be maybe having a reference that you're kind of going towards, especially if it's the first time you're doing an effect. If you have something in your mind or something pulled up that you know that is your kind of your goal for what it would look like, so you can start breaking down the elements in that and trying to recreate it. We use a lot of reference of like Terminator 2 and stuff for muzzle flashes, just having something on hand to know that if this is what my goal is to make it look like, comparing side by side what mine is and what that one was, and like, okay, well, I need a little here, I need a little of that. You can always trust those one-to-one references rather than just trusting in your artistic genius to be able to figure out exactly what it should look like in your head.
And it's really hard to get those concepts out. Like we have such visual ideas sometimes that it's like it's gonna look like trying to get the words to describe something. And sometimes it's easier to just mock something out of Photoshop.
Yeah, and I think another step along that is getting people involved to, if you say, here's the effect, and my tendency is to be like, okay, here's the effect, I already know how to do it, just do this, do this. But when I stop and explain it to people and my team in there, I'm like, hey, I need to be flying, how would you guys do it? Even if people don't know anything about effects, generally they have ideas like, oh, you should lay on a garbage can and put a green screen behind it, and sometimes they have way better ideas of how to approach the effect, just from a practical, oh, this is how I would do it.
Yeah. Also, one other thing that's really important when doing visual effects is having good elements, good footage to work with, and generally for each project we do, we find when we're going to sit down and do a visual effect, we need to actually do a practical effect first. We need to film some sort of element, whether it's like a guy doing a flip on a green screen, or some liquid flying through the air, or go shoot some guns at night and get some more muzzle flashes from the right angle or something. It's like there's a lot of practical stuff still involved in getting there. Stock element packs and action essentials is cool to have your little emergency reserve there. But when you start trying to really get convincing effects, typically you need to kind of go out and set up what you need to capture for that moment to really sell it.
Camera notes are extremely important then, right? Especially if you're shooting with zoom lens. It's like, oh, we shot this at 50 millimeters and the camera was doing this, and so having all of those camera notes, being able to shoot the right place for it. It's like, oh, how were we? Maybe it's a little bit closer. You're going to spend so much time fighting with it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So then it seems like, is the solution to a better effect to throw more money at it then?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That makes it super easy.
Yeah.
If you want to pull off a quick and easy effect, honestly, the best solution is to do as much of it practical as you can. Having even just a little bit of practical stuff, like you're saying, is throwing rocks in the road, just an explosion, just taking dust and throwing it. Well, that's now you don't have to simulate rocks anymore. Like, it's a big chunk of work to be done for you. So even just the most basic practical elements, if you can work those in, it goes a long ways. And then from there, it's kind of up to what resources you have, how far you push it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Honestly, money. I wouldn't say it's money. It's just a little bit of creativity for how you're gonna sell your effect. It's the blend that makes things look real. Because when you have an effect, if you're putting something into a scene that's fake, ideally you want to see it interact with something that's there. So, for example, we recently shot a little gunfight in an apartment, and we had no explosives. We had we didn't have anything spraying around. We didn't have blood sprayers or flour sprayers or anything. It was literally just some plastic guns and a bag of flour. And the guys were doing the gunfight and it was just nothing's happening. And we filmed it all, get the angles and everything. But the thing is, while they're doing this, we have a guy, a little guy, who's just too short to be in frame. He's throwing flour up. So people are whoa, like that. And so suddenly we take all the footage, people are doing this, we got flour randomly flying around, throw some muzzle flashes in, and it looks like everything's exploding around. It looks like everything is really happening. Guns are making smoke, the walls are making smoke, and so it looks like it's pretty much realistic. But it's because we have that natural, real thing happening in the environment. The flowers interacting with people and swirling around when people move through it. So it looks like this smoke and all these fake things we put in there are now real. We've got that it's crossed over now. So
What?
Yeah.
Flowers?
Little flowers.
Little flowers?
Tiny little flower petals.
yeah,
An action scene with flowers?
yeah,
You don't see his baby now, right? It's like little babies.
yeah. You know how to make that stuff.
I think an important thing that people have to remember too when they're watching tutorials and learning how to do it is not to just copy a tutorial. Maybe at the very first time that you're doing it, just copy it just to see, but to see what the point of the tutorial is. VidCon2015, it's a wonderful place, it's free. You learn about the world zoom, you can pull out from a rooftop all the way down to the world. You see that, it's up. People are oh, cool, and you watch a bunch of beginner short films and you see a bunch of people doing the world zoom, but then you don't see them taking that concept and applying it to something else. And so going from one location to another, like what you guys did with the shooting one that you were doing, the aimbot, that's basically the world zoom, parenting stuff to other stuff, that's the concept of it. So whenever you're reading tutorials or watching tutorials, try to think, okay, what are the concepts being used here, and how can I use them differently? Because if you use it the same way, everyone's watching VidCon2015, everyone's just going to have world zoom. It's going to be boring. Seeing movies with world zooms, it's what a boring thing. We've seen that enough. Use it in a different way. It'll be better.
And if you do the tutorial one-to-one, never ever put it in a reel that you send to other people, right? Because if they pick that out, it's just an immediate thing they just write off when looking for employment.
Yeah, I mean, that monster face one is really cool. I love the monster face.
So I did for Andrew Kramer over there back. Thank you, Andrew. No, I'm just kidding, guys.
We got such kids. He's pissed. He's pissed. That's it. What's up?
It seems like experimentation then is a really big part of the process.
Yeah, definitely. Well, when I was learning visual effects, editing tutorials is a big part of it, and a lot of times I have in mind a shot I need, and I try to find a tutorial that covers a similar idea. For example, the world zoom idea, you could apply that, for example, zooming into cells on a plate or something like that. It's the same idea, it's big scale. And so I would do that, but then the next step would always be to do a test. And you go out and you just try the effect, and you do it quick, and you just learn what's working, what's not, and how you need to shoot for that effect. So when you actually get your friends together, you get your costumes on, your cameras running, on the day of, you know what you need to achieve that shot. So I highly recommend doing tests. It's So very low pressure.
And on that, with tests, I would say add, just even if it's a stupid story, a beginning, middle, and end, and it'll make that test look way cooler to your friends. Like, immediately way cooler. Because it makes sense in context of something short.
Definitely.
Unless you're doing music videos, and then you can just
Do whatever you want. Every fan.
Yeah, totally.
As long as you cut fast.
An exercise that I started doing early on with effects, and I've kind of still kept doing it, it's kind of a fun little game, especially in traffic, was to pay attention to, try to, your eyes from day one of learning how to see things, you learn to see the end result of all the light bouncing around a room and how it's behaving. So what I try to do is try to deconstruct what light was doing. So for example, on the highway where I have to do it, stuck in traffic, see where the sun's coming from and how that's casting shadows in this direction, and see the color of the shadow is the shadow is not completely dark because it's being illuminated by the sky that's around it. And so understanding that skylight is blue, and so if you start thinking, you would never see it with the naked eye when you start paying attention to it, oh, the shadow is slightly blue. And then the area in the car where the sunlight's hitting but the skylight's being blocked is slightly more yellow, and kind of trying to deconstruct how light's bouncing around the world around you, because your eyes, you're sort of fighting against your human nature of your eyes, learning how to see things as a complete picture at the beginning, and then applying that to visual effects. So we're trying to comp a fake element into a scene, knowing that shadow that it's casting has to be slightly tinted blue, and on the front side of it, it's a pink object, it needs to be a bit of a pink spill because the sunlight's hitting that and casting pink on the environment around it. And so try to see how the light's bouncing around the room, and if you keep practicing that, just whenever you got a little bit of spare time, often stuck in traffic is a great time to do it. Then you can start to know how to better composite things in scenes.
Yeah. I mean, that also, what you're describing there also, it follows the same basic principles of any medium of art, I guess, for that matter. Whether you're drawing or painting or anything, you go through the same process. And visual effects is no different, it just happens to be in motion. So it's just one extra element on top of all the other basics. So definitely highly recommend studying painting.
We can keep going on that then. When you shoot a scene, you have your shutters open for a certain amount of time, so it's going to create a certain motion blur. And then knowing that any element that you track into that scene has to be composited in a way, you have to fake everything that would happen to that object if it was shot there as if it was real. So if there's a person that's walking, you want to put a hat on their head, and you see the person's got this certain amount of motion blur that's, you can measure, zoom in, and it's 6 pixels long. You have to put a blur on there that's 6 pixels long on the hat you're putting on your head in order for it to blend that scene and not stick out. In the same way, if the hat's black and they're wearing a black shirt, if you use the scopes and you look at the black shirt is at 4% luminance, then the hat that's on their head now has to be at 4% luminance in the same way, the light is going in this direction. And each one of those steps kind of messes with their scene. And when you get it all right, you'll notice everything kind of sinks in very naturally, it looks very good. But rather than doing it all by eye, I always recommend trying to use the scopes. So always mirror the saturation, the luminance, everything that's about it, and match that.
We're going to be opening up for questions in a little bit. You guys, if anyone wants to line up at the mic. But right now, I mean, is there something special that came out of, is something unexpected that came out of a moment you found? I'm sorry, this is a question got away from me. Is there a specific instance you think of something special that came out of almost an accident?
There was one time, remember when we were shooting that video together, the review video, that we had to get everything in one shot, basically one single continuous shot. And it was like a laundromat thing, we were doing noises like a laundromat, and then I walked up to a fire thing, and it was a cool sound when I was hitting it on the side, and it was like, it was just a cool sound. And we were okay, take 1, take 2, we're not quite getting it. Take 3, I hit the thing, and the glass breaks all over my hand. Cut your hand. I cut my hand, I didn't notice until the end. And we're like, what do we do? And then from behind the camera, I just heard both of you guys like, keep going. And I'm okay. Ding, 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 ouch, ouch, ouch. And we just kept doing, we did another.
I remember that. I don't know if the final take you used.
I
don't remember you being paid.
And what was it like? You go and there's all the kids at the end, and you're subtly bleeding with all the kids.
Yeah.
And it's just don't look at my hand.
Yeah. At the very end of that video, we all high five, and you can see one of the high fives. You also
A giant glass shard.
Yeah, that's my favorite part about that.
It just happened that when we ran outside, there were these kids was like, "You're Mr. Guitar Man." I'm like, "Yes!" And I had a guitar hidden behind like the Mustang. I was like, "Start dancing, kids!" And we're like, "What?" It's like, "There's a camera coming, start dancing." Oh my gosh. And then, all just sort of like awkwardly, like, what's going on?
That's so incredible. That's such an incredible story.
I think that's
And the
it.
best thing about it is that the moment that glass broke, we knew that one prop was ruined, so we couldn't use it the next time. So there's kind of this energy that comes about where you just know that it's your last shot that you're going to take, and so of course that kind of ends up fueling it, whereas it's just, we can't just cut and go back, we really keep
Right.
going.
Yeah.
All right, let's take our first audience question.
I actually have more of a comment than a question.